Hey, Norbert.
Hi, Jodee.
It's so funny to start a new podcast. I've done this many times. I've started new podcasts many times. I didn't know that what I was doing early in my career was a podcast because I was just having conversations, and then this thing called podcast came out. Well, actually, that's funny to think about. I started a blog back in 2004 before
Oh,
people,
wow.
I know, before people even knew what blogs were. I think I was at one point I was like in the top 10,000 bloggers because I was one of the first ones.
One of the first 10,000.
Yeah, right? And
Yeah.
and it's just because I was a writer, and I still am a writer, and I needed to get ideas out, and I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So, getting into this space of podcasting has been kinda natural for me. I had a radio show at one point, like, on terrestrial radio, and, just really kind of fun to communicate and connect. So, I think, to set this up for people who may be listening to this at some point, that's my background in this kind of technology. And I know
hmm
you have a background in technology.
Well, more so in the marketing aspect of the technology. People think that I'm like techie, but I'm actually not that techie. I'm more on the marketing side. But yes, I've been in digital marketing since about 2006.
Oh,
So in the digital marketing space, affiliate marketing, digital marketing, mentoring, coaching, digital courses, membership sites, all of that kind of stuff I've been involved in since 2006. And so and speaking and conversations have always been just a big part of my life.
mm,
Always enjoyed diversity of conversations, debates, topics, discussions ever since my early teens. When I met up with a young kid, he was 16, I was about 20, and he was really into philosophy.
mm,
And he got me into philosophy and, just having deep discussions with him about the state of the world and philosophy and society, all these things. I've always really enjoyed challenging my own preconceived perceptions and beliefs. I've transitioned many times through different beliefs and ideals as I've grown. And I just think it's so important for us to have conversations and dialogue.
yeah.
And so that's what's always drawn me to podcasts. We just launched our brand new podcast with our company because I just enjoy meeting new people and learning from new people and having those conversations. And a podcast is just such an awesome tool for that.
Yeah, completely. And it's almost like I found it and I went, oh, thank you. There's something that reflects who I am too, because very similarly. So we should probably tell people how we met because we have met in person once.
Yeah.
But do you remember? Like, could you tell how we met? Do you
I
remember?
don't think I could. I mean, I remember meeting you through a mutual friend
Yeah.
and working on the project that he was working on. I honestly don't even remember where we met in person.
In Vegas, at an event for that group.
Wow. Okay.
So we, our mutual friend Adam was working with a mutual friend of Adam's and mine,
Hmm.
Dawn, on a project, and you came up because Adam said Norbert needs to know this, and Adam was working with you, and you and I, didn't have a ton of interaction back then. And that was, I don't know, 2019,
Yeah. Oh,
maybe.
before that. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was doing my thing, you were doing your thing, and we reconnected not that long ago
hmm
because of this platform that well, I don't know if it's a platform even, an idea I had that I put out in public called Purple Dialogue. And the idea was kind of planted in my head in about 2016, maybe 15,
Oh, wow.
because of political junk that was happening. And I didn't do anything with it. I bought the domain and I kept it, but I hadn't done anything with it. And this year, in the United States, well, I don't have to tell people about that. We know, has been a little crazy, and I decided to do something with it. Partially because I felt like the timing was good, and partially because I wrote a book that came out right before Christmas. And in the book, I put additional resources, and I made this be an additional resource,
Mhm.
purpledialogue.com. And I thought, well, if I'm going to put it in the book, I better have something to point people to. And that's kind of how it was born. And you'll have to tell people how you found it. I don't even remember.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following you online ever since we connected, and I don't know what it was about you that just kind of connected me to you. There was something that I resonated with you on, just your philosophy and your approach and the things that you would say. You seemed like thoughtful, caring, intellectual. Um, involved in coaching and leadership and all of that kind of stuff, which I'm passionate about as well. And I just felt like there was really an affinity there.
Mhm.
And so when I started seeing your posts just recently this year and seeing you really be curious and questioning of the situation that we're in, the political atmosphere that we're in, the social atmosphere that we're in, and some of the challenges that have come up, I was really excited to see somebody from a different political perspective than myself being open to dialogue and conversations.
Mm.
Because I've seen over the last few years, ever since COVID, that was a big sort of defining moment that divided people into camps.
Mhm.
And that division obviously started way before that,
Yeah.
and it's continued since that. But what I noticed around that time and what really frustrated me is the inability to have conversations with people.
Mm.
Just all of a sudden, because of my, particular beliefs or stances on certain issues during that time, I was just shut down and silenced. And we lost family members. We just had people completely disengage from
Mm.
conversation. And we saw that online as well. Different people being silenced and platforms taking different people down for different reasons. And we continue to see that. And my biggest frustration with all of this was, why can't we just talk about these things?
Yeah.
Why are these things off limits? Why do people just shut down and get angry at each other
Mm.
and not engage in dialogue? So
Yeah.
when I saw you posting about, can we talk?
Yeah.
Please? Can we
Mhm.
have conversations about these things in a respectful, intelligent, adult manner?
Mhm.
I said, yes, I'm
Mhm.
absolutely interested in something like that.
It's funny because that's exactly why I created it, and it didn't take off. I mean, it hasn't taken off at all because, well, I don't know. I can't say because. I don't know why. Um, I think to your point of COVID, absolutely became a dividing line. You mentioned that I'm writing notes, by the way, just
Yeah.
because I want to remember. You mentioned an inability to connect, and I wonder if it's an inability or it's an unwillingness.
More so than that's what I felt. It was more an unwillingness to connect.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to have conversations with people. I
Hmm.
wanna have conversations with people that disagree with me, but they just call me names.
Yeah. So then I wonder if that's the way it is it something that can be taught or is it something that's innate? Like I am so fearful of a different opinion that I have to strike out because that would be an inability. And
I think it's the climate
yeah.
that's been created.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't feel safe
Yeah.
to speak your mind and to speak your opinions for fear of retribution, cancellation, all sorts of different things, right?
So if it's that, then the person there seems to be a side of the conversation that has more power than the other that would be able to cancel or able to fire you or whatever it might be.
It seems to be that way.
Yeah.
That I believe so. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but it definitely feels and seems that way, absolutely. And my concern with power structures, and obviously this is going to be, we're going to evolve this into many conversations
Mhm.
about many different topics. One of those topics would be power structures. And one of my concerns with these power structures that we have in place is that if we aren't cautious to stand up for true values and principles,
Mm.
and if we can just move some of those principles aside for various reasons,
Mhm.
power structures shift.
Yeah.
And if one side has power now and is able to silence people, there's a very good chance that that power structure will shift to
Right.
the opposite. That's what we've seen with political power
Sure.
structures.
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yes.
if there's precedent set from one side to cancel or silence one side, then when that power structure shifts, it's going to come back
Yeah.
tenfold on the opposite side, which is probably what you could be saying right now
Mhm.
with the shift in the
Mhm.
political power in America.
Mhm.
I'm now seeing things that he's doing and that that political party is doing that I don't agree with either
Yeah, right.
because of these power shifts.
So before we go too much further
Yeah.
in doing this, I want to set, since this is the first time, the first recording we're doing, let's talk about dialogue as opposed to discussion and debate, because I think those terminologies are used interchangeably many times, and I don't know that people even know that. And I don't mean to be a snob about this, but I'm a grammar expert. My undergrad degree was in English. And so I really am careful with the words I choose, and the word I've chosen for this is dialogue. To me, dialogue is when you agree to suspend previous assumptions for the purpose of learning from each other. Just for the time you're together. It's not a doesn't have to be an overall thing, but if you and I agree when we come together that we are each going to bring with us an open space where we agree to suspend previous assumptions, because in some way perhaps the conversation itself is more important than our ideologies for that time we're together, that's a dialogue. And because that's hard work, it is hard work. It means I have to do something before I can even come into the space. I think that's why people either don't do it, or maybe they don't even know the distinction, because there's so much into debate, which we kind of know. We learn about debate in school, pick a side and don't listen really, just say your stuff. Discussion, I think, is something that, especially in corporate America, we say we're going to have discussions, and a discussion, by its the root of the word, comes from the same root as percussion and concussion. So it's less about listening and opening your mind and changing your perspective, and more about getting your idea in. Hey, listen to what I said. I prepared for this meeting. I want to make sure you heard what I said. And then I get it out, and then I think I'm done. So then I just sit there the rest of the time while somebody else does the same dump. And then we were done. We say we're done. And that's not what you are interested in, or I'm interested in, I don't think, from what you've said.
I really love that groundwork that you've set. And I think this is what can make this podcast a little bit unique, different, and also important because we want to bring different people into these conversations,
Mhm.
obviously. We want to bring different perspectives into these conversations. And we want to come into these conversations, and maybe we can talk about the purpose a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
me, the purpose, and I think for you too, is a level of understanding,
Mhm.
trying to understand a different person's perspective and why they've come to the conclusions that they have and why they believe the things that they do, and why they make certain decisions. I think it's really important to have that level of understanding because there's a lack of understanding of each other.
Mhm.
Tribalism, which is kind of where we're in right
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
is us versus them.
Right.
And when you dehumanize the other and just put labels and names on those other people that you disagree with, there can be no basis for understanding. And without understanding, we will have conflict
Right.
and we will have division. And people do very awful things to each other when they dehumanize them.
Mhm. Yes.
So there's a real and valid fear based on history, um, that if we don't learn how to have dialogue, if
Mhm.
we don't learn how to have understanding between each other, and if we can't find some ways to compromise, we're going to have serious conflicts.
Right.
And I'm afraid of that, honestly, to be
Well,
perfectly honest.
yeah, and it is something to be, I would say, be concerned about over being afraid, because if we look at, the way we're wired, you and I are not going to let fear win in who
No.
we're being in the world, right? So I'm not going to be afraid of things, but I'm going to be aware. There's a difference between being aware of something, be aware, and beware.
Mm,
Two different ways, right? I was raised in a beware family. We were afraid of everything. And there was something out to get us all the time. The way my mom was a child of the Depression, the Great Depression. So I really kind of understand that. But at some point we weren't in that space anymore. And so I didn't learn things that I learned as an adult because my mom didn't know better. My parents didn't, they just did the best they could with what they knew, and they were in survival mode, and fear was what was driving them. And so, with a different awareness, I wrote this down. You were talking about us versus them. If we only know us, Or here's even maybe a more controversial way to think about that. I don't know me at all. I only
Mm.
know us, right? This is how we've been trained to be. I don't fit into the us that I was raised in because my insatiable curiosity came early in my life, and that didn't fit with the religion I was raised in, the family I was raised in. So then you have to ask yourself, so why did I get plopped into that space? Me, my spirit, my soul, who I am at my core, when my family didn't really know how to support that curiosity. You identified it. I want to learn. I want to understand. I'm curious. I wonder if that's something you can learn or if
Mhm.
it's I don't know.
And see, I think coming from this place is where I feel like we can have really powerful dialogues,
Mhm.
right? I loved
Mhm.
your posts about your wonder and ponder,
Mhm.
right? I wonder if, what a beautiful way to enter into a conversation. I
Mhm.
wonder if,
Mhm.
instead of always needing to be right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I fall into that as well. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to these conversations, is
Yeah.
because I know that you'll call me out on some of my harder stances.
Mm.
And I admit it, I do have bias and I do have some harder stances on things. I believe I'm justified in it
Mhm.
because of, my understanding of things.
Sure.
And at the same time, I want to be called out. I want to
Yeah.
be challenged. I
Mm.
love the way that you're being very specific in the language that we use,
Mhm.
because I do feel if there's something that comes out of these dialogues, there needs to be some structure and some rules in place, some agreements that we
Mm.
have to come
Mm.
in into the dialogue with, right? So we
Yeah.
agree to come in from a place of curiosity.
Mhm.
We agree to suspend our need to be right. We agree to wonder
Mhm.
and ponder
Mhm.
and ask what if,
Mhm.
instead of being so certain of what we think we know. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that really irritates me right now, is certainty. And I
Mhm.
see it from everybody in all political spectrums and all beliefs. Everyone's so certain of what
Yeah.
they think.
Yeah.
Everything's such a fact.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a thing called nuance,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
there's a lot of gray here,
Mhm.
and there's lots of different perspectives to look at this. And
Yeah.
so, can we actually acknowledge other people's lived realities?
Mhm.
And can we actually be open to diverse thoughts and beliefs and cultural background, and be accepting of it and be willing to move from there instead of being so certain of things?
Yeah, totally. Because what would be there's danger, I suppose, in both. There's a danger in opening my mind to something other than what I think I already know, because it
Mm.
might mean I have to admit I was
Oh,
wrong.
oh,
Can I even say that? What happens if I was wrong about something? Oh my gosh. That's where learning comes from. I mean, I was a basketball player in high school and college, and I always think about my freshman year of college. We won the national championship, and after Christmas, we were 25-0. We won every single game. Before Christmas, we were, I don't know, whatever that would be. I'd have to do the math. I told you I'm not good at math. We lost 3 games before Christmas. We lost 3 games before Christmas. And that year, I don't really remember too much about the games after Christmas except the one we won. I remember each of those 3 losses because we adjusted and we learned and we did something different because it didn't go the way we wanted it to. So instead of
mm,
being mad at our opponents for being better than we were, we used that to go, okay, what can we learn from this situation? And it showed on the scoreboard. I guess basketball or any sport is easy because there's a win and a loss. But in life, you don't win at life. I mean, you don't just win. Like you get to the end and you're like, I'm the winner. You have all had an experience of this thing we call life, right? So it's not like we can play I guess I'm going to use some Simon Sinek language, but a finite game in this. This is an
mhm,
infinite game, and it kind of depends on the mindset we bring into the infinite game. Is it winners and losers, right and wrong? If I'm right, you need to be wrong. If I win, you need to lose. Okay, you can choose that if that's how you want to live your life, but I don't choose that. The
mhm,
difference is I let you do you.
mhm,
Right? I don't think we know how to do that I suppose we started with political conversations because it might mean that if you're right, I'd have to be wrong in my mentality, right?
mm,
Because I believe there's a right and wrong. And if I admit I was wrong, then that puts me on a lower space, and has, going back to the power struggles, right, puts me lower on the power grid. And
Yeah.
all of that's just too scary for people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And this brings up, and we won't be able to dive into this deeply in this conversation, but I hope to in another. And it's this question that I keep pondering, is whether or not it's even possible for us to come to some consensus or
Mm,
agreement,
mm, mhm,
right? Because I'm always of the philosophy of and
mhm.
instead of or,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
I'm always looking for okay, well, what if it's this and this,
yes,
right? Like,
yes.
what would that look like? So I'm
Mhm,
really always open to that. But unfortunately, like when I think about again, politics is so easy because it separates left and right, and
right.
obviously there's a spectrum and lots of
Mhm,
nuance within it, which we're going to discuss. But there is a left and a right,
mhm.
and when you really look at the divisions, because I'm curious about what's common between us. I'm always
Yeah,
interested in the commonalities.
yes, yes.
But there are certain things that do divide us
Mhm,
in our beliefs. Like there is kind of like a right and a wrong. So one example is ideologically speaking, the idea between collectivism
mhm,
and individuality.
mhm,
Those two things seem to very much contradict each other
mhm,
politically speaking.
mhm,
We're either putting the rights of the collective first or we're putting the rights
mhm.
of the individual first.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like we are evolved enough, mature enough to be able to have a conversation of what that looks like if it's and.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we're rooted in it's got to be one or the
right.
other. And then depending on where you sit in that ballpark, ideologically speaking, which one do you value? That tends to then drive all of your decisions
Mhm,
from that perspective. And so there's my question, like if fundamentally you believe that collectivist rights are superior to individual rights, and I believe the opposite,
mhm,
how can we come to a consensus? Because isn't that a very dividing
mhm.
belief?
So I love that you said this, because I wonder too if consensus is the goal. I wonder. I don't know. I'd like to talk about that concept. Going back to the way you said it, though, I wrote down, you mentioned earlier about nuance.
Mhm.
And you said there's got to be more than just one or the other. You said, I like, and I'm all about, so you're about the nuance. So for the way I wrote it down when you just said it, first does not have to equal only.
First does not have to equal only.
Meaning, I see collectivism first, you see individualization first. It doesn't mean only that, it just means
Mhm.
first. So, what it would mean is I think of other people before I think of myself,
Mhm.
or I think of myself before I think of other people. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to take your side, not side, but I know we've talked about this before. I mean, my gosh, if I don't take myself first, I can't put the oxygen mask on anybody else. I have to think of myself first in this context, in this way,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because otherwise I become the charity I'm trying to help,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we have to, in my opinion, again, this is an opinion, but we have to have enlightened leaders, people who are doing the hard work of looking inside, looking in the mirror, wondering and pondering, getting curious. What this book I'm reading, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, calls conscious leadership, above the line leadership, which is open, curious, committed to learning. If you're not conscious, you're unconscious, which means you're doing the best you can in the awareness you have, which is unconscious, because you are closed, defensive, and committed to being right.
I love that you brought that up because I think I want to talk about this leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that this is one of what I would love to see this podcast turn into, and I hope is that it brings in people who are leadership minded,
Mm.
natural leaders, because I truly feel like there is a serious lack of leadership in our world today. Yeah. I mean, on all fronts, in so many ways, this is such a huge topic. What does conscious, like when you talk about conscious leadership, right? And we think about the leaders in our world right now running the show, corporate leaders, government leaders, leaders everywhere. How many of them would we qualify and say they are conscious leaders?
Mm.
and exemplify those 15 principles of conscious leadership? Probably very few. So that would mean that we have a serious lack of conscious leadership in the world. And what would it look like for more conscious leaders to have a voice,
Right.
to have an influence, to have an impact on people, to be able to lead the dialogues and the conversations
Yep.
instead of the unconscious leaders that are running the show?
Yep. Well, you talked about fear, so we could just break it down into fear and what, faith, or fear and spirit, or fear and love, dare I say?
Mhm.
And in that way of looking at it, if we want to be dichotomous, I like and a lot better too. But if you want to be, one or the other, why would you choose fear? Why would people choose fear unless they are the ones who are the not leaders but the bosses of the world, I
Mm.
have to I have to put the hammer down because heaven forbid I'd stop and look in a mirror for a second.
I like that you use the word boss because I think that's the distinction here. Are you being a
Mhm,
leader? Or are you being a boss?
mhm,
'Cause I don't see a lot of leadership. I see a lot of bosses trying to
mhm,
run the show
mhm,
to retain power. What
mhm.
does conscious leadership look like? I haven't read the book, but you've
Yeah,
shared with me some of the principles, and I
yeah.
think that this is really important because I believe I think that that book and those principles should absolutely be the cornerstone stone of these dialogues,
Oh,
and we would, every speaker, every guest that
mm,
comes onto this show should attempt to live up to those
love that.
15 principles,
Yeah.
right?
I have it right here. I can show. I would love to get the authors of the book on. I
Absolutely.
think it would be great. I've been looking for Kaylee Klemp, who went off on her own. The three people wrote the book together, and it's not a new book. It's not. It's
No.
what, 2015 maybe. It's not
Yeah.
new, but the principles of this are my personal values. It just so happens when I read it, I nodded my head through the whole thing because the principles. They call them commitments, but the principles are things where you just hear them and you go, well, yeah, well, duh.
Mhm.
I call them fundamentals, just fun and mental with duh in the middle. And when you hear it, you go, well, duh, of course. Well, that's a fundamental, right? Those are the things we want to talk about. And we could break it down and talk more about what those 15 commitments are. But the first one in the book, the way they start the book, is leading from above the line, which is what we just talked about. Being aware, and they talk about four different ways of leading, which is really important too. Four ways of leading in the world: to me, um, as me, by me, and through me.
Mm.
And so there's a lot to you know take apart there too. But they say that 95% of the people they've worked with spend 98% of their time in the to me way of being, below the line. Victim. My life happens to me.
Not that high.
I know. I was appalled. I don't know if that's the people they've worked with. Maybe it's because they come to them when they need help and they start noticing that they're below the line. But 95% of the people spend 98% of their time in that space of my life happens to me.
And they're talking about leaders that they've
Mhm.
worked with and interviewed.
Mhm.
So when you think about the general public,
Mhm.
that's all of us. I mean, the
That's right.
majority of us, then that the assumption to be made there is that the majority of us live in a to me mentality, in a to
Yes.
me perspective. And this just brings up uh my thoughts about libertarianism.
Mhm.
Because if I were to really like define my political leanings,
Mhm.
it is definitely more so to the area of libertarianism and even, dare I say, breaching into the realm of anarchy.
Okay.
Not in the conventional understanding of
Yeah.
anarchy being, chaos
Right.
and no rules. No, not at all. Um, the word anarchy actually, I believe, means without rulers.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean without rules.
Right.
It
Right.
simply means without rulers.
Blurs. Interesting.
Okay, so it's a very important distinction there. Um, I can't remember where I was going with this, but you
So
98%
yeah.
live in the realm of victimhood. One of the things that a friend of mine who was a libertarian leader here in British Columbia for a time, he talked so much about how we outsource our responsibility.
Mm. Yep.
And this is what we do on so many levels.
Mhm.
Libertarianism is about taking full
Mm,
responsibility
mm.
of your local community,
Wow.
of your infrastructure, of your financial
Yeah.
situation, taking responsibility instead
Mhm.
of outsourcing all of that responsibility. Oh, the government will handle it. Oh, they've
Right.
got institutions to take care of that. Oh, they've got social programs to deal with that. I don't need to worry about any of this stuff going on in my community here because other people will take care of it.
So interesting. So no coincidence here that this is the first of the 15 commitments. Check that.
Taking radical responsibility.
Taking radical responsibility. So yeah, that's just a dip your toe into what this conversation could produce or produce really, because what we're doing, Norbert, we didn't have an agenda today. We didn't even really know what we were going to talk about. And
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of did because I wanted to introduce this and talk about and by the way, you did ask me why purple at one point.
Yeah. It's so
So
simple though now when you explained it.
right.
I feel
So
silly for even asking that
no,
question.
no, no. I think it makes sense though that people would ask, and I wrote on the purpledialogue.com what people could find out if they wanted to know more about it because it says who we are and who we are not
Mhm.
in at least the foundation I've created. But purple is just what happens when you take red paint and blue paint and you put it together. And so red and blue are the two sides of American politics. I don't know how it is in Canada,
It's
but
the same. Yeah,
okay.
our liberals are red and our conservatives are blue, and then the NDP is orange. So yeah,
Oh, interesting. Okay. So our conservatives are red and our liberals are blue.
yeah,
But when you combine them, you get purple
purple.
and different shades of it, right? A darker or a lighter. It's just the willingness, I think, again, going back to dialogue, to suspend previous assumptions in the time we're together, just so I can go, huh, wow, that was some things I never thought about. I'm going to leave. I can pick up all of my assumptions on the way out the door if I want to. But I'm the hope I think that you and I both have is that at least something got planted where somebody says, I wonder, I maybe don't know everything. Maybe, oh, wow, maybe, what if, all those kinds of conversation starters that would have to start with me, not with the people, with the we. It has to start with me.
Mm,
I think. Otherwise, I mean, I can, if I don't lead somebody in a formal sense, I still lead myself.
yeah. And what does that mean to be able to lead yourself? What do you have to have in place? What clarity do you have to have
Mm,
about yourself
mhm,
to be able to lead
mhm.
yourself
Yep,
really authentically?
yep,
You've got to know yourself. You've got to
mhm,
take responsibility for yourself.
yep,
I think you've got to be clear on your values and your beliefs.
yep,
And what I've noticed with most people is that we say we believe certain things and we
mm,
say we value certain things, but then our behaviors don't
yep,
necessarily reflect that.
yep.
And we're not typically called out on it.
Yeah. Well, because of fear, right? We're not called out because of fear. Yet, when you and I set a stage, set a space, set a time we're going to be together where you say, I want to be called out, and I say, I want to be called out because I want, this is going to sound weird, I want to be wrong. There are things about American politics I want so badly to be wrong about
Mm,
because right now it doesn't make any logical sense to me. There's very little, I can't say nothing, but there's very little that I see and go, that makes sense.
mm,
So help me be wrong about the judgments I'm having right now. Help me be wrong about some of these things or help me see a way to ask a question that could have somebody leave with a little tiny bit more space in their beliefs.
yeah. So interesting because I'm a very logical person too. Like in
Mhm.
my personality, on
Mhm.
my personality profiles, I'm a super logical person.
Yeah.
And everything happening in the world today and in American politics makes complete logical sense to me.
Funny.
So that's a fantastic conversation
Right.
for us to have.
Right.
Yeah.
But from the
Why
way I mean, I understand, I think, what you're even saying about that because, obviously, it can't be any other way. I look at the humanity of it and think, how in the world can people who say they, like you said earlier, have beliefs and values, say they care about humans, treat humans the way we're treating humans in
yeah.
our workplaces, in our families, the way you just said it earlier in the beginning of our conversation, where you said COVID created rifts between families
Yeah.
who love each other.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened there?
Right? And to me, that doesn't make any logical sense.
No, it didn't make any logical sense to me. Well,
Mhm.
it does because I've studied a lot in the area of influence
Mm. Mhm.
and
Yeah, marketing.
marketing and
Sure,
messaging and
sure.
propaganda and all that kind
Mhm,
of stuff. So when you
mhm,
start to bring some of that in, then you're like, "Oh,
mhm.
yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
read this really great essay by, a lady who was a big Green Party supporter, and this was one of the thing it was an essay I wrote in I think she wrote in, like, 2021,
Okay.
and, she was a member of the Green Party, so very, very
Mhm,
far left,
mhm.
very environmentally conscious and all that kinda stuff. And she wrote an article around that time entitled How the Left Was Duped. And it
Mm,
was a very insightful, essay from her perspective of
mm.
somebody that's very much far left
Yeah,
philosophically,
yeah.
and the things that she saw and emotionally how these rifts were created
Mhm, mhm,
between people. And
mhm.
it was really devastating. It was really awful to see and to see in our own family, just the rifts and the hatred towards
Yeah.
each other, it's just so unnecessary.
I wanna my values are, have to do with love. I mean, I have a little jar on my desk that has my values in it, little jar of rocks. And so the things that I call non-negotiables, one of them is kindness.
Mm,
Not nice, but kind.
mhm.
And if we could be kind, we could ask hard questions, knowing that I'm not asking it to be a jerk. I'm not asking you this question to catch you at anything. My curiosity has me ask this question. Tell me more about you. Help me understand you. And what I've noticed in my own life in the last 10 or so years, when I become more curious of people who are probably pretty fear based, I get fired or let go from these organizations because they feel like I'm trying to catch them at something because that's their context.
Yeah.
I only ask questions when I try to catch people at things. So when I come to something from my own values, which are curiosity and kindness, they can't process because they don't have the context.
I've seen that on your social posts.
Yeah.
You were literally made a social post where you're asking a question
Hmm.
out of curiosity, and you
Hmm.
got attacked by it in the
Right.
comments.
Right.
I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, they're not even she's not attacking you. It's not
Right.
personal.
And it's her, and it's my post. I people came onto my post and were trying to, and I'm like, this is my space, people. I mean, come
Ha
to my house, but I'm not
Yeah,
going to let you break my shit.
yeah. I mean, and I guess my question is, have we always just been there? Or are things worse
Hmm.
today?
Good question. I'm
Just
becoming more aware. I think
we're
as I
maybe
become more aware, my awareness expands, maybe. But I choose because I have expanded awareness in that way. I choose my narrower yet deeper path for my close relationships.
Mhm. Absolutely, and I think that's what brought us together,
Mhm.
to share in this project and hopefully to expand and find other people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
also wanna
Exactly.
have these
Mhm.
dialogues
Right.
to reach understanding and to
Mhm.
figure out where do we go from here? Because I don't know, we either keep going into more separation, more division, more conflict, or we find a way to talk to each other.
Right. And I think if I can just offer some way to think about that from the time from now till the next time we get together, what is your individually, anybody's listening, what's your biggest why? What's your biggest non-negotiable? Like, why is this so important to you? Why do you feel like this is something that would be beneficial or helpful? Is it so that you have more tools or more weapons? And so if you think about that for yourself, you'd have to look in the mirror to answer that question, and you might not like what you see. And that's okay because that's the beginning of breaking down the old ways of being. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but it's very simple. It's not
Mhm.
easy, but it's simple. Just knock it off. Just knock it off. Just see people as humans and not as objects. Okay, but not easy because we've been conditioned this way for probably generations.
Yeah. And I think there's also a lot of personal, personal psychological drivers,
Mm, mhm,
of like self-preservation,
mhm, mhm.
protecting your
Yep,
identity,
yep. Ooh,
right?
that's a good conversation too.
Ooh,
I
identity, right?
Identity, what do you do if you have to change your identity? Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for people that politically speaking, again, just taking it back to politics, but you could apply this to religion or social status or anything like that, right? You know, your family's always been Democrat or
Mhm,
liberal. You've always
mhm,
voted Democrat or
mhm,
liberal.
mhm.
What would happen if you shifted
Yep.
and voted differently? How
Mhm,
would your friends treat you? What would be
mhm,
your identity? How would you
mhm.
fit in?
So good.
Would you be accepted? I
Yep.
mean, and this goes for all aspects, religion that you were raised in, the
Mhm,
community that you're a part of,
mhm.
right? And I know some people, I've always been more of a chameleon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, I've never had that need to belong to a
Mhm,
group. I've
mhm,
always darted between different
mm,
groups, and I've
mhm,
never been fully in one group.
mm,
I mix between
mhm.
groups, and I can be a chameleon, and I enjoy that, and I know that there's other people like that.
Sure.
And at the same time, I would say that most people prefer to belong to a specific group. There's a
Mm,
comfort and a
mhm,
security there.
mhm. Well, and that doesn't have to be a divisive community. It could be an inclusive community. It could
Mhm.
be that I want to belong to a community where people value diversity, or it could be a community where, no, we believe red is it. And that's the community I want to belong to. I love the way Peter Block defines the word belong. He says it has two contexts. One is ownership. This pen belongs to me. And the other one is simply a longing to be.
Mm.
I have a longing in my heart, my soul, my spirit to just be with people and not have to prove myself and do the right things, or I just want to be, because I think in that space, when I said do the right things, I don't mean that's all. I guess that's how gangs form too. That's what we believe. But I think for me, I don't want to have to always prove myself or justify things, or "God, am I good enough to be here? Am I blah blah blah?" Because you were talking earlier about power struggles, and again, that could be another topic. But I look at power differently than that. I look at David Hawkins' way of thinking about power and force.
Mhm.
Force is external, power is internal. And if I can just get into my own personal power and own my power, I become much more confident, not arrogant. I become much more, maybe in my value system, I become much more loving and open and compassionate. And because my values are giving me my power, Amy Cuddy's power stance, that's a powerful, positive thing.
I love that distinction. I want you to keep that
Mhm,
moving forward between
mhm,
the distinction between power and force. I 100% agree
mhm.
because, yeah, the power structures that I was talking about,
Yeah,
really, when you think about it, power, you're right, is internal. So if we
mhm.
think about those power structures, it's actually a use of force, not power,
Right, right. Yep.
right?
It would again, the language just hasn't caught up yet, or we don't have the right I see right now I lose words because there's really nothing to describe what I see the future possibilities being, because
Mhm.
we only have our own judgments of things right now. So
And history to guide us.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
But
and it's
in two ways, right? We can be guided by history because we don't want to do what we know has happened, or we don't want to go back and do that again. I mean, yeah, we say we want a revolution. I don't want a revolution. That revolves. I want an evolution where we evolve out of our old ways of being. I'm a fan of spiral dynamics, and so I'm really interested in that whole observational structure that was created by Claire W. Graves. It's not a mandate. It's an observation. It's like, wow, what if? What if people evolved in that way? I love that concept.
Mhm. Yeah, so this is going to be really interesting because we're going to be diving a lot into, philosophical,
Mhm.
ideological concepts and ideas, and trying to also bring it down into the practical reality
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
politics,
Yeah,
religion,
right.
identity,
Yeah.
groups, agendas,
Mhm.
all these types of things that we're all dealing with
Yeah.
as, as citizens, as people in our societies. And we are approaching, I think, I don't think there's a lot of debate about this. We are definitely approaching a time of great change.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
With
yeah.
change comes upheaval,
Yes.
comes discomfort,
Mhm.
comes conflict.
Yep.
And so I think these dialogues are more important than ever before
Mhm.
because we're not going to stop the chaos.
Nope.
I don't think there's any way to avert our, society and humanity from the chaos that is upon us and
Mhm.
coming. And I think that we can also find better ways to navigate it. And within it, maybe find groups and communities
Mhm.
and leadership
Mhm.
that can maybe guide us down a better path.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope.
So Jim Rohn, we'll just leave with the Jim Rohn quote. I think it was Jim Rohn who said, "Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better."
Yes.
There we go.
I love that. I love that. So I guess this is I was sort of thinking about this episode really being
Yeah.
an invitation to other people that resonate with this message
Mhm.
and want to have some more understanding about others and people and try to find how can we find commonality? How can we find common
Mm.
ground? Where is the purple road?
Yeah. Yeah,
What
yeah.
does the purple path look like?
Yeah.
Where you can bring people together from different viewpoints, different perspectives, different beliefs, even. What does it look like for us to come together and follow the purple path?
Yeah, what would, again, what would that be like? And no big agenda here, like everybody has to be purple now. It's not like that at all. It's like, what do you bring that I learn from? What do I bring that you learn from? And then what do we do with it in our regular everyday lives? So
Yeah.
guests and people, we'll bring people on, eh, but what you just said, in that context, people who believe what we believe, maybe people who have a differing belief but are willing to share their beliefs in a dialogue format.
Are you willing to have a dialogue,
There you
a
go.
true dialogue,
Mm.
right? Are you, I love the commitments. Are you willing to commit
Mhm.
to the 15 commitments of conscious leadership, or at least maybe the top five,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Taking that first one that you brought up, taking radical personal responsibility. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to commit to that? Are you willing to come into a dialogue with conscious awareness
Yep.
instead of
Which
preconceived notions and beliefs?
which will probably mean you need to change your mind at some point.
Are you willing and open to change your mind?
Mhm.
Truthfully, honestly, even for me, like sometimes when I think about that, even when I just said that, there was a little bit of discomfort that I
I know,
felt,
right?
right?
Right.
And I am open. I
Mhm.
am willing to change my mind. I do feel that I'm an open, liberal-minded
Yeah,
type of
yeah.
person. I'm
Mhm.
not stuck in my
Mhm.
very rigid ways. And that's what I think was so insulting to me is I've always been very liberal-minded, and when people start like literally I've been called a racist, bigot, transphobe, homophobe, like all those bad words, I've been called all of those things
Mhm. Mhm.
simply because I expressed certain perspectives.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to get to know me first a little bit, maybe?
That you hit on the most important thing, that if nothing else came of this today, watch in your own lives, listeners, how many people ask about you. If you are the one asking about people because you are curious, just stop and observe how many people actually have asked anything about you. That's what I'm noticing.
Yeah, it's very few, isn't it?
Very few.
Very few. And how can we have a true dialogue if we don't take the
No,
time to better understand somebody?
that's right.
Yeah. Love it.
Thanks,
Love it.
Norbert. This is going to be
Thanks.
fun.
Thanks, Jody. Good start to this dialogue.
Yes.
And we will definitely be continuing these dialogues and hopefully bringing on some more people to spread these dialogues and yeah, touch on lots of different topics.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.